Today, the question that I have for you, especially in light of the modern culture, should Christianity just throw in the towel when it comes to marriage? Not just the ceremony of marriage, but what constitutes the marriage? You know, who does it involve? We have had in our culture, since when I was younger, it was just marriage was between a man and a woman. It was just the way it was. And it was like that for a long time. But in recent times, marriage became between anybody who felt affection or attraction or just wanted to be with each other for whatever reasons they might have to be married. And so it kind of opened up a door that had not been opened up before in America. And it seems to have spread all across, the world as well in a lot of places. And now, instead of just being marriage being defined by man and woman, it's defined by woman and defined by man and man. Now it's gotten to the point where you're not sure what gender you're dealing with, especially when people are saying there's up to 120 some genders out there. And all we need to do to have a family is to love one another and get married and do your thing, live and let live and let people be. So this doesn't even include all the fornicating out there and all the adultery out there. From my understanding, there's just as much fornication, which is sex outside of marriage, and adultery in the church as there is outside the church. There's just as much divorce. I mean, the church looks like the world with a religious symbol over the top of it that says we are God's people. But with all this going on, is it time for the church to just ditch the whole ideal of marriage so that we can reach more people? Is that what we should do? Should we soften our stance on marriage so that people can enjoy holy matrimony? That's what we used to call it, holy matrimony. We know that in Scripture that God created a man and a woman, and that a man is to leave his mother and father and cling to his wife. We know he's done that. And that's what's being rejected. But what we don't know is, why did you do that? Why didn't God allow for it to be man and man, woman and woman, or whatever gender you want to call yourself to whatever gender the other person wants to call themselves, or whatever surgery you had on yourself to whatever surgery they had on themselves, and all these other things? Why is God so strict on marriage between a biblical male and biological male and a biological woman? Why is he so strict on that? Why can't the church have some flexibility? Well, there is an explanation to this in Scripture, why God has marriage and even why he hates divorce. And divorce is pretty rampant, let alone all the other issues going on that attack marriage. And the institutions of the world really do try to tear down marriage. And why is marriage attacked so much? This little scripture will answer that too, because we are in a spiritual warfare. So let me read from you out of the book of Malachi. And we are going to be in chapter 2, and Malachi is a minor prophet, not because he was less important than the major prophets, but because it's just a smaller book. But he does say some very profound things in here. And God, through the prophet, is speaking to the people of Israel about why God does not take their offerings anymore. He doesn't accept what's done by their hands anymore. It'd be like us going to church and singing songs and giving tithe, and God's like, I don't care. You think I'm impressed with that? I'm not impressed with that one bit. In fact, you anger me when you do this because of this. And so this is their response. So Malachi chapter 2, verse 14, we'll start there. And this is the people responding back to God. Yea, ye say, wherefore? Why, God? Why are you being this way? And this is what God's response is. Because the Lord hath been witness between thee and thy wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. Yet is she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. So God is standing as a witness between the men and these wives that have been dealt with treacherously. I mean, we even see the same thing going on in Jesus' day when he's asked, hey, can a man divorce his wife for any reason? And just write her a certificate and say, here you go, a piece of paper we're done with. That's what they were doing. And they tried to trick Jesus. Like the question was, I think the purpose was to trick Jesus. And he says, well, if it's such a bad thing, then why did Moses allow it? And Jesus answers back, because your hearts were hard, but it was not like this in the beginning. So the only reason that there's divorce that was allowed by Scripture is because men's hearts are hard. And we know that for infidelity, going outside of marriage, cheating on your spouse, Jesus does say, except for that, you should not be looking at getting divorced. It's not for any reason whatsoever, give your wife a certificate of divorce. And interestingly, best I can tell in the Old Testament, in Jesus' day, that only the men could get divorced from their wives. Wives couldn't get divorced from their husbands. It was kind of a one-way deal there. And this next verse is why God made marriage so specific between a biological male and a biological female, and to be a covenant that lasts for a lifetime. And did not he make one, that is God, he made the two one, that we know from the book of Genesis. God made the man and the woman to get married and become one flesh. Yet had he the residue of the Spirit, and wherefore one? So why did he make him one? That he, being God, might seek a godly offspring. Interesting. Without the institute of marriage, without that holy covenant between a biological male and a biological female, a lifelong covenant, the honoring of the marriage bed, treating, your wives like you treat yourself. You love your wife like you love yourself. Women honoring their husband, which I know can be difficult, but it's the thing we're supposed to do. That God did all this so that he might look upon the earth and hopefully find godly offspring. Therefore take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. So if God instituted this holy matrimony so that he might seek godly offspring, what does it mean for our day? When the definition of marriage is so skewed, and even those that recognize it's to be between a biological male and a biological female, that it's dishonored because of all the divorce. It's not, forget all the attacks from all the other temptations in the marriage, like alcoholism and other things, that destroy the marriage, or modern thinking that says you need to support anybody's decision on their gender, and some parents do that, even though they themselves are heterosexual. Forget all those other ones. But just thinking about the attack upon the family itself, just on the side of marriage, just on that one specific subject. Marriage is almost undefinable now because it means anything. Anything, anybody. I see stories out there where someone got married to their pet or some weird object, because that's what they wanted. It's just such a mockery of what biblical marriage is supposed to be today in society, and those who have followed the traditions, not because of their convictions of it, but because that's what they did, still find themselves, fighting infidelity and fighting other things that just tear down the family, which destroys the marriage. But what does it mean for us when God can no longer look down upon the earth and find godly offspring, nor are we trying to cultivate anything in which he can still look down and find godly offspring upon the earth? It's interesting that he did all this because he wanted to produce a righteous people. And the only way to do that is to produce it through a godly, biblical, holy marriage that's a covenant that lasts a lifetime. Outside of that, we're not going to produce godly offspring. Yeah, there are people who grew up in horrible situations and they find Jesus. But that's like here and there. The real thrust of producing a righteous people was through marriage, biblical marriage. And we just don't have that anymore. What happens when the church totally capitulates and endorses any kind of marriage, any kind of union with any kind of people or number of people? What does that mean for us? What does it mean for the times that we live in when God finally says, okay, I have no reason to look any further for any more godly offspring? So should the church give up on the idea of marriage? Or as people that say we love God and keep his commandments, should we double down and say, no, this is what marriage is, and this is who it's between, and this is a lifelong covenant?